Resident Evil heads to theaters. GTA goes 3D. And Korean MMOs are eyeing the U.S. shores. These stories and many more on this episode of the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine.
I've been waiting a long time for a chance to say this. Stop the presses.
Requiescat in pace.
Makes him crazy, man. What is a man?
It's me, Mario.
What a mess.
Get over here!
Please save me.
Welcome back to another episode of the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine. I'm your host, Carl, and we are once again joined by our very special co-host, John of the Retro Game Squad. Welcome back, John.
It's good to be back as always. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for being able to step in. Peter is again out on assignment, unfortunately, but hopefully we'll get him back for the next 40-year jump. And today we are going to be jumping back in time 20 years to look at what was making headlines in March of 2001. So, but before we do that, as podcast tradition does dictate, we must banter. So, John, what have you been up to lately?
That's a good question. I think
we really should talk about this stuff before we record. I know.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's just been crazy with the times and everything. I believe last time we did this, I announced that we had just recorded an episode that's been out for a little bit. Just been doing my usual retro gaming and hanging out with our crew. Plus catching up with you, man. It's been good to hear from you.
Yeah, it has been. It has been. I wish I could say I've been playing more. I played about 5 minutes of Tetris on the Game Boy right before we recorded, but that's pretty much all the gaming I've gotten in the last 3 weeks. But I was supposed to have a break right now. This was supposed to be my break time. It's all fallen apart, and I have to go back to work on Monday.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it is what it is. My copy of Deadpool for the Xbox 360 is still sitting there unplayed and mocking me. But
I mean, that's kind of what Deadpool does, though. So it's.
I know, yeah, it's kind of one of those things. But yeah, but I will get to it. I swear it. I swear it. Okay, well, before we can turn on the time machine, we have a couple of things to take care of, and the first of them, and very importantly, is our 7 Minutes in Heaven, where my intrepid co-host of the episode has to spend 7 minutes playing a game that was reviewed in a publication dated March of 2001. Remember, everything we do in the show, we're always going by the cover dates on magazines, so of course every event happened a little bit earlier. Disclaimer over. And the game that we chose today was supposed to be one of the greatest games of the era because Peter hadn't played it, which was Jet Set Radio on the Dreamcast. But because John has played that before, I couldn't do that, so I went to my runner-up, which was Typing of the Dead on the Dreamcast. Unfortunately, also a game he has already played. So after going through all the options, I finally landed on the last game on the list, the bottom of the barrel, The Dregs, which I'm actually kind of looking forward to forcing you to play, Hellboy for the PlayStation 1.
Oh, this is going to be fun. I guess so. I usually give my co-host some dogs to play, so this is the universe giving me payback. So, Alex, if you're listening to this one's for you.
Exactly.
My user handle is JetSet. On everything else, that game is very much a building block of my gaming career.
And this is why I could not give you that pleasure. This has to be entertaining. So, everybody, let's let John play Hellboy for 7 minutes. Welcome back, John. Tell us about Hellboy.
Oh yeah, that was a game right there. It had a menu, and an intro video, and then it had some walking around for a bit.
Mm.
Oh yeah, there was a puzzle there too, and that's about all I got time to play because there's a button that you had to press that opened up something completely arbitrarily not related to anything. Obviously, I solved more of the game in that time through process of elimination than actually putting things together, which is saying something. But points for trying, I guess. Man, we were ragging on that on the character model too. It's like they shrunk his head and like just his torso they oversized with this little lanky arm, and I guess his gauntlets like appropriately shaped, but I don't know. That was a game.
Yeah. Turd-tastic is the only phrase that really comes to mind here.
Oh, fantastic. To put it nicely.
Yeah, and the wonderful tank controls and fixed camera, even though it was in a 3D modeled world and stuff, that was pretty terrible.
Yeah, not great.
No, and this is one of the rare occasions where I personally had not played the game before. I just remember reading the reviews, especially because I was a huge fan of the comic, and yeah. I knew it was going to be bad. Watching you play it, the reviewers were not wrong under any circumstances.
I kind of want to give it the benefit of the doubt just because it's how late into the PlayStation lifespan is this though? I don't even want to say that I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt without.
This is coming out, so it's being tested in the March 2001 issues. Christmas 2000, the PlayStation 2 is already out in Japan.
Oh, okay.
So the system is already 6 years old at this point.
Oh man,
7 years old if you go from the Japanese one. Yeah.
Okay then. All right, I take that back. That's just that's a PlayStation game.
Yeah, I mean, this is years after Metal Gear Solid. This is years after Final Fantasy VII. This is just terrible. And the best part is the same exact game got released on Windows.
Did it really? I have to track that
with the same art sets.
Oh yeah, I guess we were talking about the difference in titling. Because the PlayStation 1 had a different title than the PC one, apparently. I guess they weren't.
As far as I can tell, it's not that. It's just the territory. So both the Windows and the PlayStation version were called Dogs of Night in Germany and Italy, and Asylum Seeker and all the other territories, irrespective of console or PC.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Well, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense at the same time, but
it doesn't make any sense that somebody actually thought this would be a good thing to sell. That's what
exactly. The whole part was they followed through with that idea. At some point, nobody said, "Hey, this probably isn't the greatest thing we're putting out. Let's not." But I guess when you have a license for that, you gotta put something out.
Yeah, you gotta make some money, and they were probably hoping the comic was popular enough. I mean, the movie is still off on the horizon at this point, and but it was a comic that was making a lot of waves at the time. It was very, very big and present in people's minds. So,
okay, yeah, I could see that.
Can't hold it against them for trying, but it was Cryo, and they're not known for good games. So there you go.
Remember, kids, if you want to actually see John play those 7 minutes of Hellboy, you'll have to become one of our Patreon patrons for as low as $1 a month. You can enjoy and indulge in all of the extra video and also 3-month early access to our interview episodes. So, link is in the show notes below.
There you go.
Okay. So before we turn on the time machine, we have to check in with our good friend Ethan to find out what I screwed up last month in our segment, The Department of Corrections. Welcome back, Ethan, to the Department of Corrections. Before we get into everything that I messed up in February of 2001, we have something to talk about. Namely,
Yes. The Peter comment.
excellent. And what is
he mocked your love of the Duke, and I'm glad for this.
What did he say again?
He said, "You like that chunky son of a bitch?"
Yes, I like that chunky son of a bitch. As a chunky son of a bitch myself, I like that chunky son of a bitch. How many more times can we say son of a bitch before we get flagged by iTunes? Okay.
No, explicit language slowly creeping into this podcast, just like Alex's. Like he used to never say any swears, and then just very steadily over time. That's the thing about being adults who only care about adults things like video games. So we're here in the Department of Corrections. I got the rubber stamp for you. So
okay,
be prepared.
Okay, hit me.
All right. You called the GameCube controller. We're not going to get into this debate again. Just be clear here. But you called it toyetic, but that is the wrong term. Toyetic is a type of I forget who coined this phrase, but it's a type of property that lends itself to toys. It's specifically about IP, so that you mean it's toy-like, not toyetic.
Very true. And yes, I should have known better. My listeners expect better of me, and I have failed them. Self-flagellation will be at 2,200 hours. Okay. But no, you're right. You're totally right. I actually know the difference, and dumb.
Yeah, of course, we're recording this at 12 at night, so you have a whole day to prepare. Anyways, then after that, talking about the Angel of Darkness debacle, and you said that it was like it. I forget exactly how you said this, but whether it was directly you saying that they didn't make any more games, Core Design didn't make any more games after Angel of Darkness. They did. They made at least one more game, but they were in a reshuffle because of Angel of Darkness. It did destroy them. They did go out because of the colossal failure that game made. But it was not immediate. It took a couple of years for Core Design to get folded into IDOS.
That's true. Yeah, it wasn't an immediate dissolution of the company, but yeah, you're right. It basically crippled them to the point where we were never going to get the one game I wanted from them, which was a 3D reimagining of Rick Dangerous. So, c'est la vie. Is that it, Ethan?
Yep, gonna make it short and sweet this time. Awesome. I could go into you for hours and hours about what you said, especially calling me out. So unprofessional. But we will leave it as it is, and hopefully you will repent of your sins one day, and you can move on.
I'm just looking forward. Let me guess, you've got very strong feelings about the Jaguar controller, right?
Anyways.
Okay.
That's all for February 2001.
Excellent. Ethan, as always, a pleasure, and we'll see you on our next Jump Through Time.
See ya on the flip side.
So, let's turn on the time machine and head back 20 years to March of 2001.
Nintendo's GameCube system.
We're unveiling the Xbox.
2001.
Graphics is a computer game.
Welcome back to March of 2001. John, what's our first headline?
Mila Jovovich cast in Resident Evil movie.
The onslaught of video game-based movies we discussed last month has no end in sight. Capcom's survival horror series is set to star fan favorite Mila Jovovich as Alice alongside Michelle Rodriguez. Other games headed to movies include Nightmare Creatures and Dead or Alive, with Nocturne and Metal Gear apparently headed for TV.
I would kill for a Metal Gear TV series if it was done right.
Yeah, I mean, granted, 2001 done right would have been a difficult thing to do at that point.
That's very true.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the Renaissance. Sopranos was only a couple seasons in at that point. You weren't going to be able to really pull off that serialized storytelling at that point. But also, Metal Gear Solid 2 hadn't come out yet, so the really crazy, thread the needle type stories that we got later on hadn't really become part of the mythos yet.
Yeah, you have to wonder if a TV show like that would have changed the storytelling, because they probably would have had to take liberties after a while to tell their version of the story.
Definitely.
I didn't realize Michelle Rodriguez was part of Resident Evil. I'd just completely forgotten, because I guess she rose to fame through those car racing movies. That's so bad.
Oh, the Fast and the Furious.
Fast and the Furious. Thank you so much.
No problem. As somebody who's never actually seen a Fast and the Furious movie, I know what they are. Yeah, I mean, she made a career with a whole bunch of stuff. She was also in, wasn't she in Grindhouse? I think she had a role in Grindhouse or in Machete. I know she was in Machete. But I can't remember if she was also in Grindhouse.
Yeah, Grindhouse sounds right because of Danny Trejo. She starred along him a few times. That might have been the other one.
Yeah. I mean, that came first, and then Machete came out of that because one of the fake trailers in there was for Machete. Have you ever seen Machete?
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for him to do the third part. Machete Kills on the Moon or whatever it was supposed to be.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember seeing the trailer for that.
The fake trailer with Lady Gaga and stuff.
Yeah.
That would have been amazing. Oh well.
Who knows? We got a Dora the Explorer movie way
Jesus,
later.
Yes. Don't remind me.
Spoiler alert, not terrible, actually. But we won't go there. And don't ask me why I've seen it.
Thank you. I don't want to have to ask. But yes, of all of these, the only ones that actually end up getting made are Resident Evil and Dead or Alive, of all things. Even though the Dead or Alive movie is still going to be quite a ways off before it finally gets made. But so weirdly enough, Dead or Alive got made into a movie. Go figure. Okay, let's leave Hollywood behind. Well, no, we don't leave Hollywood behind, do we? What's our next story?
Interplay and Shiny to enter the Matrix.
The 1999 mega hit film about people being stuck in a video game and beating it by using cheat codes is finally going to get games. Shiny would develop Enter the Matrix, an ambitious yet deeply flawed tie-in game that follows side characters during the second film, and later The Path of Neo, which would reimagine the events of the movie, but also suffer from gameplay and camera issues. A third game, Matrix Online, would be developed initially by Monolith and later Sony to mixed reviews.
Wow, they had such a potential with that trilogy. I remember Path of Neo wasn't as great, but the Enter the Matrix came out strong, being tied in with the movie. Or I guess it was, I think one or two of the scenes happened alongside the second movie, or kind of like the reboot of that like new arc between the two movies that came after the first one. But yeah, Path of Neo was rough, and I got involved in an early beta test of Matrix Online, and that game was rough out the gates. They missed an opportunity there, and it's surprising that Monolith got pulled in on that, because they're known for a lot of heavy hitters back in their day.
Oh, definitely. I mean, they were a very hot studio at this time. They had just come off of No One Lives Forever.
Yes.
A Game of the Year and all this stuff. It's just the problem with the Matrix license, I think, was the gimmick with the camera was going to be a very hard sell for actual gameplay at this point.
Right, especially multiplayer, because you can't in order to do time slowing down, you can't slow
do it
down
in multiplayer.
real time. Yeah, exactly. You just can't do it. It's not
No.
physically possible.
Yeah. I mean, it works great in a story-heavy game like Max Payne, where, it's a single-player experience and you can do the bullet time wonderfully there. But if you're, number one, Enter the Matrix didn't follow the main characters. They had, I think 90 minutes or something of new footage filmed just for the game, but it's all following side characters, and nobody gives a rat's ass about the side character. You buy a movie tie-in because you want to replay the movie or you want to play as the main characters, and you don't want to suddenly play as somebody who showed up for 5 minutes in the movie.
Right, which is something that I think they tried to retcon with Path of Neo, but it was just too late, and they were still missing the mark completely.
Well, and also by the time Path of Neo came out, the third movie came out, and everyone was like, oh shit, the Matrix blows. Yes, I know, I'm going to get hate mail for that one. But let's be honest, just like any J.J. Abrams project, the Matrix fell apart once they had to reveal the mystery behind it. The first one ends on no answers, and you're like, cool, we'll get answers. The answers will be great. Then it turns out the answer is kind of blue. So there you go. Sorry.
The blue pill. Should have just taken the blue pill, man.
It should have just taken the blue pill. I mean, it would have been so easy to come up with a decent answer there, but no. At some point, I'll have to write my own fanfic and fix that. But oh well, that's another issue entirely. And we're going to get a new Matrix movie at some point soon. So I don't know if that's really a necessary thing either. But hey, we got sequels to Dumb and Dumber, and there's an Austin Powers prequel movie being filmed right now. So
yeah, we got a Coming to America sequel that wasn't terrible either.
I still haven't watched that. I don't know if I need to do that to myself.
I would say it's worth a watch. They actually managed to capture what was great about the first one without being too aware of what they had done before. I would say it's actually surprisingly good.
Okay. I may have to sit down because I'm a huge fan of the first movie, and may have to check it out. It could be good. Could be. I'm not holding my breath, but I will take your review of it. I will definitely take under advisement as soon as I have time to watch a movie.
Right. Yeah, but we digress.
Yes. Okay. Moving on.
Nintendo sues Imagine Media over unofficial Pokemon guide.
Nintendo of America filed suit against Imagine Media, parent company of the website Games Radar and print magazine Next Generation, over the publication of the 100% unofficial Pokemon Guide. The claims are based on the reproduction of artwork and screenshots from the games in the guide. As a result, Next Generation has dropped its GameCube Watch section this month, and Games Radar has also ceased covering Nintendo systems until the issue is resolved.
That's wild. Just Nintendo swinging their power around.
Basically, yes. It's Nintendo thinking that they can, number one, go against, at this point, at least 15 years worth of legal precedent saying that if you're going to do a strategy guide, you have to describe the game. You have to show the game because you cannot do a strategy guide without it. This was litigated back in the days of Pac-Man. And so that's really a non-starter for them. And I think it's just the fact that they wanted to be making all the Pokemon money. And it just irked them that somebody else was going to make money off of it instead. And I found one link describing the fact that if you wanted the information that was in the 100% unofficial guide, you had to buy not one but two books from Nintendo that together were going to cost you about $23. And they were selling this book for like $10. So,
That's interesting. I remember.
yeah.
I remember when the book came out. I can picture the cover in my mind too. But yeah, it never occurred to me that I guess Nintendo also trying to control how they're releasing this, because Pokemon's still relatively new at this point.
Yeah.
And they're kind of controlling that image. But for someone to come in and release the 100% official Pokemon guide is I can see both sides of it, but in the end, I do think it's a little much there. Easy there, Nintendo.
Exactly. And this whole thing will be resolved by the next month. I couldn't find any exact information on how it got resolved, whether or not there was some kind of fee paid, whether or not the guide was pulled. That I could not find, but the very next month, Next Generation is back to covering the GameCube. So whatever the case may be, it gets resolved.
Yeah, that's kind of a not a great thing if you're missing coverage of 1/3 of the potential game systems out there and games.
Yeah, well, the GameCube hasn't launched at this point yet. It's still on the horizon.
Right. But do you want to be the publication that's not covering that?
Of course, you can't. I mean, it hurts both sides equally, if you will.
Right, exactly.
And talking about all sides being hurt equally.
Yes, that 1/3 part. Shiochiro Iramaji leaves Sega.
The Dreamcast failure continues to produce blowback. Sega's president, and I'm going to kill this, you probably did this much better than I did, Shoichiro Iramajiri has stepped down. Officially, he was just demoted to vice president in charge of researching future console tech, but as this is no longer a viable option for Sega, he will be leaving the company in January. The engineer with a history in the automotive industry would return to his roots with Asahi Tech, a maker of car parts.
Wow, straight to cars.
Yeah. I mean, well, he came from cars.
Oh, right.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so he was actually an engineer. And there's actually here if you look down in the show notes, and again, everything we always talk about, there's links to everything in the show notes. There's a great episode of the of Alex Smith's podcast, They Create Worlds, where he talks in depth about the decisions that led to the Dreamcast becoming the machine that it was, the partnership Sega entered into for getting the parts and stuff, and how those decisions essentially determined that the Dreamcast never had a chance to begin with. And it was Irimajiri's fault, essentially, for giving the go-ahead to the wrong people. And so I'm going to link that down below. It's definitely worth your time. Everybody should listen to it. Clears this up. But yeah, he's gone. He's the last president of Sega to oversee the production of consoles.
That's crazy. And I also apologize for mispronouncing his name there too. I definitely missed the Majiri portion of it. But we'll have to practice that.
At some point, if somebody can send us a phonetic correction of it, I'm sure Ethan will. Ethan, who is much more proficient in these things than us, is going to add that to the corrections next month. I am positive of it.
All right, bring it on.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about components.
Intel announces chip price drops.
The price drops of up to 40% are a result of significant market share drop due to competition from AMD. They are also in part due to their brand new 2 GHz Pentium 4s, which, thanks to higher than expected yields, will be hitting the market 3 months ahead of schedule. Don't count AMD out yet, though, as they are pushing their Athlon chips to new heights as well.
Man, the processor race.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about 1 gigahertz chips finally being available, and already now they're up to 2 gigahertz and just going to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, And it's weird because in many ways it's a side effect of the dot-com bubble, of all the people going online, buying PCs, and IBM compatibles becoming, in a way that they never were before this, true cheap mass market products. I mean, we all talk about, with the 386, it became a mass product with Doom and stuff that pales in comparison with grandmas buying a PC so they could surf the internet and send emails to their grandkids.
Yeah, such polar opposites of, I guess, consumers of PCs at this point.
Oh,
but hey, It's made it into grandma's living room, so.
And now it's made it onto the little device in her pocket that she keeps calling you on because she needs tech support with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. But so these price wars are going on, and it's just going to get more and more competitive. And of course, this is later going to shift to video cards, as for a gaming standpoint, the CPUs become less and less important, and the video cards become more and more important.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. And even in the future, we're starting to see AMD, at least in the processor market, take over Intel, or very close. They're definitely duking it out.
Oh, definitely.
Wild to see.
It's been going on for 20 plus years now. I mean, well, last week's episode when we did the 30-year jump is when Intel lost the battle to protect the 386 designation on their chips, so that AMD could sell chips that were also labeled 386. And so this is, it's a battle that's been going on for a very, very long time between these two. It's still going on today. And it's something that we're probably going to talk about many more times because there's going to be a lot of wrinkles going forward with patents and everything else.
Right, exactly. And a lot of these new consoles are starting to leverage AMD hardware. I know the GameCube was a big one, and also Intel chips. I think Intel was in the original Xbox.
Yeah, the original Xbox was an Intel chip.
Right.
I can't remember what the 360 was, but it may have been as well.
Right. But it's just illustrative of how things change so quickly.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, a console cycle nowadays is 6 to 7 years, so that's an infinitely long time in the tech biz.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Well, talking about changes in technology.
EA gets real with Majestic.
One of the most innovative, if commercially destined to fail experiences of all time, Majestic is a game of mystery where players try to solve a conspiracy plot through clues released in real time to their phones, fax machines, email, and a game-specific app. Additional content would be found on websites set up for the game, and the goal is to uncover all the clues in time.
No, I didn't know about this one until we talked about it recently. I'm aware of all the different the alternate reality games that I guess maybe either spawned from this or became big as game teasers. But to have a game like this at this time, looking at some of the requirements too, the CD version of this game came with a copy of Internet Explorer and AOL Instant Messenger, just to date it exactly when it came out.
Yeah, no shit. This game, I mean, there had been some attempts at this type of experience before, nothing on this scale, nothing with this development budget. And what was also very popular around this time were, for example, for the launch of movies and stuff, you already had, a movie website, and there had been some attempts at these real world things where, fake websites would be set up. I still remember, want to say it was 95, maybe 96, if you were a fan of Shadowrun, which was a pen and paper RPG. And they used to actually move the plot of the game forward 1 year for every year that went by in the real world. So there was a big event where of the elections in what was left of the United States were happening, and they actually had these websites set up, for the candidates, and you could follow along what was going on, and there were polls and stuff, and you could incorporate that into your pen and paper game to the point where on election day you could check the website and see who won the election. And then after that, there was an assassination of the president and all these other things happened. And you were following it through their websites as if it was real material. So this concept of using the web for fake news, if you will, it had some precedent before Majestic, but nobody had actually tried to do it as a big commercial product like this before.
Yeah, that's fascinating to see the early big attempt at doing that. Again, this is all new to me, so I'm just sitting here with jaw drop, big eyes. Just describe it.
And it was this very, very interesting idea. We see it nowadays when like a Marvel movie comes out, there'll be a fake newspaper website or whatever, with headlines about the Marvel universe and stuff like that. And we kind of take it for granted that you can pull this off nowadays. But back then, the idea of moving the game to this other level and using the resources of the web to do this, to update it in real time. Another thing that wasn't really common was updates to games that you downloaded and stuff yet. Mm-hmm. The modding community for Quake and Doom was there, but it was still kind of an innovative idea that the content of the game wasn't on the CD. And in very many ways, there's an old game called The President is Missing. So it's Commodore 64 and PC and Amiga back in the day. And it was a similar game concept where you were an investigator, the president has been kidnapped, and you're sifting through the few clues that you have, like bits of people's memos, and there was even a cassette tape that came in the box with news anchor recordings and a recording from a terrorist group that had supposedly kidnapped the president, making their demands and all this stuff. And that was all sort of found material to try to figure out the plot, but it all had to be on the disc that was in the package. Mm-hmm. And this idea now that every day there would be new stuff coming out, you'd solve certain clues, you'd be moving the plot forward, and every day there'd be something new. Well, part of this is super cool, but at the same time, you can also imagine from the point of view of Electronic Arts is how long can we keep producing material, because production of material costs money. And, how do we keep this going as a financial model? And I don't think anybody had really thought that through just yet. But I can also see how this would be attractive, because Ultima Online is huge at this point. EverQuest is huge at this point. But those are games with relatively complex interfaces and require a lot of thinking in terms of fantasy and stuff. This would be a way to maybe grab an audience that wasn't going to be attracted to the fantasy setting, wasn't going to be willing to deal with the more complex interfaces, and just give them an interface they already know in the form of Messenger, in the form of text, in the form of websites.
Right. Yeah, it's a very novel way of doing that. I guess to draw a distinction now, those like murder mystery in a box type games that you can get nowadays, very similar.
Very, very similar, yeah. And this is why this Majestic game gets basically big write-ups in all the major magazines at the time, and it's going to fail almost as quickly. It's not going to last long. Yeah, unfortunately.
You hate to see it. I love seeing an honest try that they're coming out swinging with something like this. It's such a cool idea, but maybe ahead of the time. But they're using fax machines and all that too. That's gonna go away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the fun part about this. It's like, they swung for the fences. They were trying something new, and you've got to give them props for that. I mean, I personally am always of the mind I'd rather spend a few hours playing something that is going for something innovative but fails miserably than to play the game that is the upteenth version of something, now polished to the nines, super level design, blah, 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 blah. But if it's the same concept I've already played before, it just bores me to tears.
Mm-hmm. Especially after the fifth or sixth iteration, like you said.
Like I said, yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, the 20th sequel of something just... I literally got bored after like 5 hours on Civ 2. Because I was just like, yeah, okay, it's isometric now, and there's 1,000 new options. It's still Civilization. Been there, done that. Give me something new.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just, yeah, I probably should give a lot of these games a lot more time. But Command and Conquer also, I was like, I've played Dune 2. Oh, now I can choose multiple units at the same time. Thank you. Yeah, okay, I'm sounding like a grumpy old man now.
Yeah, you do. I'm taking a little bit of offense to the Command and Conquer statement, but I also get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Man, speaking of sequels in a series, doing something new.
Nice transition. Good job.
Thank you.
This.
Grand Theft Auto is going 3D.
Take-Two has announced that the next entry in the Grand Theft Auto series, Grand Theft Auto 3, will shift from the traditional top-down to a full 3D perspective, even though an option will be included to play the game from a bird's-eye view. The game will also launch first on PlayStation 2 with a PC port to follow a few months later.
I wonder if anybody who grew up with the first two and was like diehard, not the behind the head camera, played the game top down. I wonder if how possible that was. It's not something I ever tried.
I actually did try it, and you did not want to play the game that way.
Yeah,
you do not want to play the game that way. Especially at the resolutions that you typically played the game at back then. You very quickly, there was going to be a lot of stuff you could not identify.
Yeah, the 640 by 480 max versus the 4,000 pixels that we have now.
Yeah, well, I mean, with 3D accelerators at the time, which were a requirement for the game on the PC, you were probably playing at 800 by 600, but even then, it just wasn't going to look right. The old 2D stuff, you could distinguish the characters from one another and whatnot. But yeah, I don't think anybody played that way for more than 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just an interesting thought. I've never really considered that. But yeah, going 3D was huge.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a huge shift, and there was a comment in one of the English PC magazines, I believe it was PC Zone, sort of lamenting, another classic 2D franchise is going 3D. Like, oh crap, it's going to be another Castlevania 64 or something. In hindsight, obviously, hilariously wrong. But at the time, if you were a fan of the 2D game, you definitely probably thought, it's not my game anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's just, that's a very real concern. Like, are they going to execute this properly as somebody who... Because this is obviously the third one in the series, but there were a couple of spin-offs, I think, between 1 and 2 as well, or like expansion packs. I'm trying to remember what the...
there was London 70-something. There's a London expansion, historic one. There may have been an add-on disc for GTA 2, but I can't remember.
Right. I'm also thinking of the jump between the top-down pixels that we had for SimCity, and then a game like SimCopter that you could take your game or take your city and then import it into it and fly around in these awfully low-numbered polygon renditions of your cities. Also the flamboyant Easter egg, but we won't talk about that.
Or Streets of SimCity.
That's right. Oh my God, I forgot about that game. Yeah, that was such a
terrible.
Yeah, so rightfully concerned, but yeah, again, we know where we are.
Yeah.
5 games later from the first one now.
Yeah, all those attempts to try to shoehorn the data in, especially at the time when you were so limited on the number of polygons you could push. I mean, the very notion of, well, whatever you've built in SimCity, now you can go street level. Well, the problem with that is if you build a whole bunch of buildings that require a lot of polygons, your engine is just going to grind to a halt.
Right.
And it's not like the level designer can now design around that, where, you have on the right-hand side of the screen a super elaborate building, and on the left-hand side of the screen a meadow. Well, why is the meadow there? Because we didn't have enough polygons to do buildings on both sides.
Right.
Type of thing. And unfortunately, if you're letting the user design the city, you can't do those kind of adjustments anymore. Also, you probably still need to have a decent game engine, which both Simcopter and Streets of SimCity did not have.
Right. Yeah, we can leave it at that, though. But yeah, Grand Theft Auto going 3D, that's, the people are just valid concerns. It's not something we think about after the fact.
Well, also the fact that it's coming to PS2 first.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's right. The first console that... Yeah, because the N64 had a pretty good start, and then the PS2 came in with its capabilities and just blowing everything out the water.
Well, but also GTA was a fundamentally PC experience originally. The ports to consoles were always secondary.
True, very true.
And this came from DMA Design, the people who made Lemmings. Mm-hmm. And so they were a traditional computer game maker. They had always ported a lot of their titles, but they always did their innovation on computers. So for the PC world, this is kind of like, they're stealing our good stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of good stuff that is not going to arrive or come anymore.
Sid Meier benches dinosaurs.
Sid Meier's long in development Dinosaurs has been shelved. A perfect example of his trademark iterative development method. The game went through a variety of permutations before finally being shelved due to not being fun enough.
So I think Sid Meier's first mistake was trying to create his own dinosaurs game as opposed to following off the Jim Henson TV series. I think that would have been a much better. Sorry, I can't keep a serious face while saying
awesome.
that.
That would have been absolutely awesome right there. And you could have actually made 2 games out of it. You could have made one where it's basically The Sims, but with the dinosaur family.
Yep.
That would have been great. And another one where you have to virtually control the radio-controlled head mechanics of the dinosaur puppets.
Oh, I would play the crap out of both of those games.
Yeah, that would have been kind of cool, like a virtual puppet. And yeah, that would have been fun.
Oh yeah, but the actual headline relating to Sid Meier's development techniques, you have to have a lot of respect for somebody who's able to get far enough and say, "Hey, I realize I'm not going in the right direction. This is where I stop." That's really cool. And this comes from his figuring this out on his own from other games, correct?
Well, yes. I mean, and this is one of those times when everybody should go and listen to my interview with Bill Staley, the co-founder of Microprose, because he chronicles sort of the development of the Sid Meier method there a little bit. But the way Sid Meier approaches game design is he starts with the kernel of an idea, usually some kind of technical thing or just a concept that he wants to turn into a game. So he usually starts with like a general idea like building a train set or, taking people through history or pirates in the Caribbean. So he starts with this kernel of an idea, of a story element, if you will. and then he tries to figure out how to make a game out of that. And this is also why a lot of his games aren't super heavy on the historical details, even though they have a historical setting, because if it gets in the way of the gameplay, then it's out. And he'll just keep doing new versions and tweaking the game mechanics until he gets to something that's fun. And if he can't make it fun, then he drops it. And the one big exception to this is Covert Action, the game that came out right before Civilization, which was a spy game where they just kept coming back to it, and they should have just killed it, and they didn't. So Dinosaurs is one of those games where it just didn't add up. And there's also a link in the show notes to one of his speeches at the GDC where he talks about his process and also explains that he had three completely different concepts at the end for what the Dinosaurs game could become. And none of them were fun enough to warrant developing into a full-blown game.
Yeah, I got a chance to watch some of that interview, and it's very fascinating to get in that guy's mind, because again, he's kind of paving the way for what he's doing, and to actually get a peek into that is it's really valuable, even as somebody who doesn't, even if you're not super into game design, it's cool to learn more about Sid Meier as a game developer.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, he is if there's a Mount Rushmore for game designers, it's him, Miyamoto, and I mean it's literally those two guys, and then also Rands. I mean, because there's guys who have developed huge games, but then just kind of didn't evolve enough with the times to keep that ball rolling, to stay the 2 steps ahead of the market. And these two guys have been doing it essentially since like 1980, 81. And there's not anybody else I can think of who's had that much game going on all the way to today.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about like maybe Will Wright, but he kind of dropped off after Spore, unfortunately. I mean, yeah. Carmack's a big player. Actually, Carmack's been keeping up with things too, because he's in the whole VR space now.
Yeah, but he's less out in the front. Level designer. You know, he's not the game designer. He's a tech guy.
True, very true.
That's the only reason I wouldn't put Carmack on there, because he's not the game design. He's the tech guy. But, you know, that's probably also a bit of a, without the tech, you don't have anything else. But then again, yeah, it's...
Yeah, I'm also waiting for John Romero to come back into the scene. He's such a rock star, and I'm so sad that, everybody knows how Daikatana went. If that had gone differently, it might have changed.
We've talked about Daikatana on the show many, many times.
Yeah.
But he did release some new levels for Doom 2, I believe, last year.
He did. I played them. They're really good. It's He also got Buckethead to do a version of the soundtrack that was pretty fantastic. It's just he knows how to make good stuff. It's just unfortunately some of the projects that he did commercially before then didn't reach the mark.
Yeah. I mean, he seems like a super nice guy. At some point, I might try to interview him, but he's been interviewed so many times at this point that it's kind of like I don't know what I could get out of him that hasn't been gotten out of him before.
Right. Yeah, I certainly wouldn't turn down the option to talk to him. He seems like a cool guy, but
yeah. Definitely, yeah. And he also seems very approachable. I could probably get it. It's just I've got so many interviews lined up at this point with people who haven't been interviewed that often that I kind of just have to pick and choose my battles.
Right.
But yeah. Oh well.
Yep.
Yeah, no, still, I mean, yeah, Romero is a legend, and there's But again, these people who have consistently been able to produce, reinvent themselves, keep going, they're so few and far between in the industry. It's kind of scary. So Speaking of new ideas and new influences.
I gotta be careful where I yell this. The Koreans are coming.
Yeah. Lineage, the mega hit Korean MMO, is being tested for a US launch. Will the morally open-ended 2D sprite-based isometric game tickle the fancy of EverQuest and UO players of the West? Well, will it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember Lineage when it came out. I wasn't super big into the MMOs at the time, but it's definitely one that sticks out in the big MMO lists.
Yeah. And I mean, in Korea today, it's still huge. I mean, super, super massive. And it's based originally, I believe, off of a series of mangas. But the game had this very open morality system where you could then ascend to owning castles and controlling the farms around it and stuff. So you could go from an adventure all the way up to basically like a economic management system, as far as I understood it. And so there's a lot going on there, and it did click enough that the server stayed on in the States until 2011. But
wow, that long.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing. MMOs tend to keep players much longer than one might think. So even after the stuff is kind of out of your sight, like EverQuest 1 and 2 are still running.
Oh, yeah.
And they're still getting updates.
Yeah, World of Warcraft got brought back for that exact reason. It's still going on, but that's a little bit later, obviously.
Yeah, and Ultima Online is still running.
Oh, wow.
Meridian 59 was brought back.
Wow, Meridian. I remember reading about some of those in PC Gamers at the time. I grew up, reading those publications, and that always came up. I was always fascinated by it, like kind of looking from the outside in. But that was such a labor of love for some people. And of course, NCSoft, known for Guild Wars as well, which is we'll probably talk about that when it actually gets released, when we're in our time machine during those times, but just to think about where that ended up.
Yeah, and the effect of Guild Wars, because they completely changed the economic model.
Yes.
And there's an upcoming interview I did with Gordon White about that. He's a developer, worked on a ton of MMOs over the years, currently in final beta test for Crowfall. So that interview is coming soon. And he talked about how that really upended the market when they shifted the economic model. But again, that's not that far off into the future. We'll still cover it in the show, I think, before we hit our 10-year mark. And that is definitely something we need to talk about because, the Korean MMO market is a beast unto itself. And it's interesting to see that they were trying to get into the States. They got a foothold, but it was never as strong as the Western contenders.
Right.
Now, talking about getting a foothold, or a facehold, if you will.
Ooh, 3Q is putting you in the game.
3Q has launched booths that let you create a 3D scan of your head that can be imported into games using the Half-Life engine, as well as numerous upcoming titles. For just $25, your game avatar can now look like you.
I didn't realize that service went back so far. It's starting to pick up again with some of the VR stuff that's going on. Like you can import yourself into VR chat, which is the new like everybody hangs out there type thing. It's the second life of current days, but that's really cool to see that kind of a service around this time.
Yeah, and I couldn't find too much information about it. The one article that I linked down below only mentions, I think, 3 locations where they have machines for this setup. I'm guessing it did not really pay off and that not a lot of people were doing it. I mean, if they could have done it for console titles, it probably would have had more success. But there's no way at this point you could have imported the asset into a console that didn't have a hard drive built in.
Right, exactly. Well, they're just creating game mods at that point. Even though that is, I mean, their service is presented as a little bit differently, but I mean the whole background is you're importing a mod for the game.
Exactly. You're basically just modifying the 3D structure and the texture of the character, and that's it.
Right.
But,
right.
People have bought digital items worth a lot less or far less useful than this. So
that's true. Oh yeah, now it's very pertinent, but we won't touch on that.
It's the non-fungible token of its day.
There you go. That's the one. Yeah, I'm curious to I would love to do some more research if I can find. I mean, I don't know 3Q as a company, but I was aware that sort of stuff was happening, and I wonder how they were doing the 3D scans because they didn't really have the LiDAR of these days to be able to reconstruct your face like that. Although textures for these games are much simpler than they used to be.
Yeah, the way that it was described in the magazine was you pose your face and then a whole mess of cameras take pictures at the same time.
Okay.
And so they're just using those different perspectives, those different angles to build the 3D model.
Right.
Yeah.
I
mean, not super complicated, but then again, at this point, you're not making super complicated 3D models, so.
Right, exactly. But those cameras weren't as readily available as like cameras are now. So to have a studio with this kind of tech, because I guess around that time you wouldn't have the crazy megapixels that we have now for in the consumer market. It would just be, if you want yourself in the game, you gotta look for something like this.
Exactly. Or you have to figure out how to use Maya or one of the other early 3D modeling software programs, which was going to be a massive, massive headache.
Yes, and that was before the open source Blender became a big thing too.
Oh yeah,
so you had to pay for it, and you had to teach yourself using expensive. I remember taking a course at community college around that time on 3D Studio, and that was some of the money that the teacher was talking about for some of those licenses. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can never pay for that unless you're going to go pro.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, back then, none of it was an option. I mean, nowadays we live in a world where you can download free software to do 3D modeling for 3D printers and stuff without breaking a sweat.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, hell, I made a case for my Raspberry Pi that looked like a Commodore 64, and maybe it cost me 10 hours to learn the software and do it. So it's insane how far we've come in this. So,
exactly.
Yeah. And talking about insane things and distances we've come.
Ben Heck's Portable 2600 brings gaming on the go.
Benjamin J. Heckendorf, better known as Ben Heck of YouTube fame, got there through his creation of a portable Atari 2600 built around a Casio portable TV. Turning classic consoles into portable devices would become one of his signature projects in the years to come.
I remember this article when it came out. It swept all of the news publications and all of that just because it was something that was fabricating your own stuff and becoming known for it was still very foreign at the time. And it's funny, I believe Ben Heck's YouTube recently released a video where he went back to his original design and talked about how he wanted to update it now that he has access to things like 3D printing and all of that, to kind of mildly continue our conversation from our previous article. But it's just, again, it's just mind-blowing where things got started and where they are now.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, the Ben Heck show got so huge. I mean, I watched it for years and years and years. I mean, now he's ended the show because he wanted to go into product design.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just one of those fascinating things to just see him tear the stuff apart, figure out how it worked, and to show you the innards of the consoles so that you actually figured out, what was inside this machine. How were they doing the things that they were doing? Absolutely wonderful and educational, and probably one of the major reasons I wanted to mess around with a Raspberry Pi.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, really, really cool to see where it starts, and the fact that the magazines were picking up on this because he had posted the instructions to build your own version of it on his website. And that then started getting spread with people passing it from one person to the other, and this is how the magazines ended up talking about it.
Now, when in the whole like tech TV, I remember when it was Ziff Davis TV before then. I do know he got coverage there as well. So in addition to the printing publications, they interviewed him, and the Ben Heck Show was definitely a thing.
If the Ben Heck Show was already a thing, then that came quite a bit later, I think. I'm not sure when Ben Heck starts, if it's pre-YouTube and it's just a download thing, or if it's post-YouTube starting.
Right. Yeah, I apologize for not having that operational knowledge. But yeah, it's just like something to think about too, because that again with that level of tech being available on, or that type of tech coverage being available on cable television was a huge thing too.
Oh yeah, that giant block of time on the Sci-Fi Channel Saturday or Sunday mornings, I can't remember. I think it was Sunday mornings, where CNET TV and all this stuff. It was fascinating to watch. Now, granted, that was usually, I think that was like 96, 97, when they'd have like a 2-hour show called The Web, where it was just people on the show talking about websites they had found that week.
Right.
Which in 96 was, it was like, great. Ooh, what's out there today?
Back when you could do internet show and tells on TV.
Yeah, I mean, just think about the concept nowadays. But at the time, you didn't have a really good functional search engine. I mean, you had Yahoo that was still just links that were actually checked by human beings.
Right.
And you had stuff like Alta Vista that was, I don't even know if it was really algorithmic based or also just human catalog stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and we were still asking Jeeves for things too.
Yes. I wonder where he is now. He finally got the retirement he deserved.
Yeah, he had a good run. I remember taking classes on how to ask Jeeves things. That was part of our school training in the computer lab, back when computers weren't as popular at home as they ended up being now.
Wow. So they were actually teaching you how to use Boolean logic to set up the parameters for the search?
Yeah, well, it was more like a research on how to use these research tools in actually doing research for papers and that sort of thing. And this was before Wikipedia too. I remember for a long time we weren't allowed to use Wikipedia articles because they weren't as policed as they are now, and they weren't as referenced either.
Yeah. If enough people write in something, then now it's truth in Wikipedia. Yeah, you gotta love that. Well, I mean, it's not as Wild West as it was, let's say, 15 years ago, but still, yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, just a little trip down memory lane. Sorry about that.
No problem. No problem. We got some memories coming up on this last story.
Yes, we do. Ubisoft buys Blue Byte.
German developer Blue Byte, famous for the Battle Isle and Settlers franchises, has been purchased by French publisher Ubisoft. The studio would continue to develop their own titles as well as a variety of other strategy IPs that Ubisoft owned.
Ubisoft was big around this time from Rayman and some of their other big stuff. I didn't know much about Blue Byte until you started telling me, as kind of prep for the episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Blue Byte was one of the few German studios that really hit it big. And they played to the strengths of what they were allowed to do in Germany because of all the restrictions on violence and games and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And also the one thing that German gaming has always really excelled at was the economic simulations. So the whole idea of well-balanced strategy. It worked for Battle Isle is a straight-up military simulator, turn-based hex field game, but Settlers was real-time economic simulation with some minor military components. And so these guys filled a niche for Ubisoft in a way that I don't think they could have built the capacities themselves in France.
Mm-hmm.
And also it gave them surefire hits in the largest market in Europe, which was Germany. So it all worked out quite well for both parties because Blue Byte, that studio is still part of Ubisoft, and they're still developing new stuff like the Anno series as well.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. That's really I guess I knew a little bit about Settlers, but I've definitely seen Anno because that's come up as a competitor to the newer SimCities that were being put out and whatever their clones are.
Yeah, the Anno series basically has gone into the future and everything else. It's a huge franchise. It has a massive built-in following, and every time a new game in the series comes out, it sells like hotcakes. At least over here. I don't know what the sales are like in the States. And the Settlers series has also continued, even though it's had some very big ups and downs over the years. But it's an evergreen property over here. And Battle Isle, we haven't seen in a long time, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's one that's foreign to me. But I do know that, there's that dedicated group of people here that play these sim games, and Anno fits that void very well for them, from my understanding. I'd love to look at Steam numbers, because they publicly release like their sales figures through their platform.
Oh, really?
That would be interesting to look into. Yeah, I honestly don't know how well it's doing. I just know that they keep making them, obviously, and they're selling enough that it's got a lot of really positive attention, because they also publish the average of their reviews, and some of them are like, this is a stinker, and other ones are like, this is a great game, and thankfully all the Anno games are, this is a great game, so they got to be doing something right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know I have friends of mine who play those, and they love playing them, and I'm like, more power to you.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, hey, it's the kind of game that I would have played maybe 25 years ago when I had a lot more time.
Right.
There were similar games like Hansa, and I can't remember. There was one that was built around conquistadors that was really good too. And then you had sci-fi things like Whale's Voyage, and I still remember Big Business was not the best game in the world, or Mad TV, which is still one of the best concepts ever for a game.
Was there a Mad TV game like that? No.
Well, it's not based on the TV show. This predates the TV show by a few years. It was
still
a German game.
Still the publication, right? Or is that?
No, also not based on Mad Magazine.
Interesting.
The only Mad Magazine games had been the Spy vs. Spy trilogy up until that point.
Oh, yeah. Spy vs. Spy was real big for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm glad we clarified that, because my mind was over here and you're talking about what it actually was.
Yeah. No, Mad TV was a strategy game where you have to run a television station, buy programming, sell advertising, buy news reports and stuff, and basically try to keep the mix going so you're always in the black. And the way the screen was divided up, The bottom left, you saw the program that was currently running on the station. Bottom right, you saw through the TV screen, and you could see who was sitting in front of the TV.
Oh, interesting.
So it was old people, young people, how many people, and so forth. And the rest of the screen, like the top 2/3, was a real-time model of the building where the TV station is.
Oh, wow.
Plus, there were 2 other TV stations in the same building. Plus, there were 2 embassies of warring countries. Plus, there was a laundromat and a couple other things. And so to do stuff, you'd actually have to walk your character from one place in the building to the next. So if you wanted to, buy a new movie, you'd have to go over to the movie depot and then look and see and buy movies there. And then if you wanted to buy news, you'd have to walk over to the newsroom. And this was their way of keeping track of the time. So you had a work day of so many hours. And while you're doing all this stuff, the shows are running. And at the same time, your counterpart at the other 2 stations are doing the same thing.
Interesting.
And then on top of all of that, you could also try to play tricks on them. The whole thing was done with a huge dose of humor. Like you could go all the way downstairs to the lobby and switch out the name tags of different offices in the building. So, for example, you could switch out the name of one of the embassies with your arrival station's movie archive, and they may get bombed, destroying their movie archive and stuff.
Yeah.
But going all the way down to the lobby eats up a super valuable time that you need to keep the station running.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those games where it's brilliant in conception, probably way too hard to really be playable.
Right.
But has so many fun little elements in it that you just kept coming back to it anyway.
Oh, that's such a cool concept. The only thing that I'm missing out of this is they're clearly missing the Weird Al UHF tie-in for this type of game. Would have been perfect.
That actually would have been a perfect tie-in for that.
I do need to check this game out. That sounds really cool. Yeah, I'd never heard of it.
TV.
Obviously, the confusion with the Mad Magazine.
Yeah, it never got released in the U.S. It got it got an English translation, but a very poor one. And not poor in the sense that you didn't understand what was going on, but the TV shows and movies that you're buying, they were what the German programmers did, and this is how you can tell it's pre-internet. They were taking the German titles, which usually had nothing to do with the original English titles, and were doing parody titles based off the German title.
Oh, wow.
And then when they translated it into English, they did a one-to-one translation of that parody title. So the names mean nothing to you.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so you end up with these titles and you're like, what kind of show is this? And you end up having to spend a ton of time reading the description of the show to have an idea what kind of show it is. Whereas in the German original, if you knew TV shows of the era, it's like, okay, yeah, they made a stupid pun with the title, but I know what type of TV show is. I can automatically guess what audience it's going to appeal to. And so I know what to buy because I need this demographic for the ad that I just sold or something. And
I gotcha.
Yeah, so that was one of the major issues that the English reviewers had with the magazine was just, you spend way too much time looking up the descriptions of the programming. But it had to do with the fact that the German programmers had to rely on the German titles, so there was no way for them to look up what the original titles were. And they just assumed, well, the titles were translated literally. And nothing could have been further from the truth.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I was going to ask if there was a translation for that. I'll have to...
There is an English version of it, and yeah, so it's out there. It's slightly flawed, but it's out there.
Still a very cool concept. I love it.
Yeah, watch a video of it on YouTube. It's totally worth just seeing the chaos of the game. Like I said, because all the decisions you're making are being done in real time as you're moving the character around, and you're seeing the clock ticking, and you can actually see, oh shit, the TV show is about to end. I still haven't bought the news for the news anchor to read. Suddenly you have dead air, and people disappear
do they just sit
from
there?
the TV. Well, because if there's no programming running, there's no programming running.
I mean, yeah, obviously.
And then people just leave the front of the TV, and you're like, the viewership is gone. And when you do start airing something, well, people have to slowly return to the TV. They don't know, so you have this extra effect of, if you can keep the people glued from show to show, it's easier to have higher ratings. It's that, spillover effect.
Exactly.
Yeah, so all of that plays into the way the stats are processing in the background.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, just so out there. I'm just like, my mind's completely blown by this concept.
Yeah, it's a game from, I think, 92, 93, somewhere in that area.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely looking that up.
Cool.
Very cool.
Okay, but that's not Blue Byte. That's a different company altogether. So we have gone completely off the rails. And
yeah, that's been the theme for this episode. I apologize.
No problem. Okay, but that does bring to a close our 20-year jump today. John, do we have a word for the episode?
Can it be an acronym?
Sure.
All right. I'm going with UHF.
As far as I'm concerned, that is a word. Excellent. UHF it is. So, everybody, I hope you've had fun. John, thank you very much for coming in and helping us out again. Always love to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's always a blast coming here, and I'm definitely honored that you keep choosing me to come back. It seems like I'm doing something right.
It's not just because you're the only one available. No, just kidding. No,
I'm okay with that. I'll wear that with a badge of honor.
It's always a pleasure to have you here. Okay, then in that case, everybody have fun.